Pandey will tell you about the site conditions and effect of site condition on the early warning system.
Good morning, everybody. I'm presenting this on local site effects. Local site effects means actually the ground motions, strong ground motions or earthquake motions are modified due to the soil conditions or local site conditions, and they have a significant effect on earthquake early warning system and its efficiency and its accuracy. So if we account for local site effects, it will be very useful in implementing a earthquake early warning system in a better way. So first I'll introduce what local site effects are and how, and then I'll tell you how they are important. The influence, as I told you, influence of local site conditions on strong ground motion is one of the most important aspects of earthquake engineering, and it is important because the geometry of material and subsurface material, even site topography, as it is a hillock or a basin, or the characteristic of input motion, it may completely influence the characteristics of motion, including amplitude, frequency content, and the duration. It may happen that at one place the duration of motion experienced is less, and in other place it is lengthier. So major seismic damage, and in some places the amplitudes are higher, in some places the amplitudes are lower, even though both the places are equidistant from the epicenter. Normally it is believed that if two places are equidistant, they must experience the same kind of intensity, but it is not so. Both the places experience different kind of intensities depending on their geology, and that's why the damage is different. Usually the amplification is much higher in softer soils, and in bedrock or stiff soils the amplification is low, and hence, and when we talk about the amplification, we are talking with reference to the base rock motion of base rock. Local amplification of the ground is often controlled by soft surface layers, which leads to trapping of seismic energy due to the impedance contrast between soft surface soils and underlying bedrock. Now, this figure is very beneficial in explaining how this happens. Let us suppose this is a hypocenter. Hypocenter is the point from where the rupture starts inside the earth, and epicenter is the point just at the surface of the earth above hypocenter. Let us suppose all these positions are equidistant from epicenter. Hence, and this red line is rock. So these buildings which are lying on rock will experience very low intensity of motion, which have these buildings which are on firm soil, means bit hard soil or stiff soil, will experience bit higher motion in comparison to buildings which are on rock, and similarly which are on soft soil will experience much higher intensity motion in comparison to both these. Another point is the motion's predominant frequency in rock sites will be higher, maybe 6 to 10 hertz, or maybe higher, depending on the fundamental frequency of the site. For stiff soils, it will be little lower than rock sites, but in soft soils, these frequencies are between near about 1-2 hertz, and hence the buildings, high-rise buildings in soft soil sites are very vulnerable to damage when in comparison to rock sites. And in rock sites, small buildings are vulnerable to damage as compared to soft sites, because small buildings have a lower fundamental frequency and the resonance occurs in rock site, and high-rise buildings have lower fundamental frequencies and soil site also has a lower fundamental frequency and resonance occurs. Now, these are the four kinds of local site effects. First is topography. Topography, how it affects when when there is a hillock, the rays gets focused, as you can see in this figure. Rays get focused and they gets amplified, and when it is a basin or a valley, they get diversified and it gets de-amplified. Similarly, another major thing is geomorphology and its characteristics. Geomorphology means the soil characteristics, the underlying soil below the surface and its characteristics, that we will discuss later. Groundwater table conditions. How groundwater table conditions affect the motion. Mostly when we talk about groundwater table conditions, the groundwater mostly affect the liquefaction. If there is a high groundwater table and the soil is sandy soil, there are chances of liquefaction. That is the most severe kind of effect. Another is bedrock depth. Bedrock depth means the soil column depth, means how deep the soil is, and it also affects the amplification, how the amplification will be. Deeper the soil column or deeper the bedrock, the fundamental frequency will be lower, and less the value of bedrock depth, the lower the higher the fundamental frequency. Now, as we can see here, how this happens. With this figure, we can see when rays travel from rock to soil, they get reflected towards the normal. Why this happens? This happens due to the velocity of wave propagation decreases with the stiffness of soil. As the stiffness decreases, the wave propagation velocity decreases. Stiffness of the rock is higher than soil, so in soil the wave propagation velocity decreases, and this wave just comes towards normal. And due to the decrease in wave propagation velocity and considering the conservation of energy, the particle motion velocity increases. And this particle motion velocity is what we experience. We don't experience the wave velocity, we experience the particle motion velocity, and all the energy transferred to particles and particle motion increases. And this, due to this particle motion increase, we experience the higher intensity of the motion. So I think this is clear that with stiffness, decrease in stiffness, the waves get amplified, motion get amplified. Now we'll see some case studies. There are various cases of earthquakes when these kinds of effects were seen. Firstly, the most devastating recent earthquake in India, the Bhuj earthquake in 2001. There was a study conducted by T.G. Sitaram and L. Govindraju in 2004, where they accounted all the effects and all the motions in Gujarat, and they found that even though Ahmedabad city was 300 kilometers from epicenter, there was a huge damage in Ahmedabad, and that was due to mainly the thick layer of sandy deposit, which is this sandy deposit is due to the, as Ahmedabad is on the banks of Sabarmati river. So most of the damage is due to was in the places where these buildings are in sandy deposit, and most of the buildings are high-rise building, not low-rise building. As I told earlier, that high-rise buildings have lower frequency, and this frequency comes in resonance with the frequency of site. So this kind of damage occurs. Now another earthquake, which is very famous earthquake, mostly people cite this earthquake for local side effects. I'll tell you why. This is the Michoacan earthquake of Mexico City in 1985. Distance of Mexico City again is similar to Ahmedabad. It is 350 kilometers from epicenter. Mexico City can be distributed in 3 zones. One is foothill zone, which is mostly rock. Then there is lake zone, which is thick deposit of soft soil, and a transition zone between this lake zone and foothill zone, which has alluvial deposits, boulders, and this kind of material, but the stiffness is higher than lake zone. The interesting thing is the earthquake produced acceleration. The accelerations experienced at rock sites were 0.03 G to 0.04 G. In transition zone, acceleration were a bit higher, but in lake zone, the accelerations were 5 times greater than rock sites. See, in rock sites we have 0.03 to 0.04 G, and in lake zone the accelerations were 0.15 to 0.2 G, which is a great acceleration. Even if you see the code, the zone 4 has 0.24 G of acceleration, maximum acceleration 0.24 G for earthquake which may occur in 2500 years. So 0.2 G is a very high acceleration. Differences in frequency content of both the motions are observed. As I told you, frequency content will change with the site class, with the site properties. The lake zone will have lower frequency of motions, and rock sites will have higher frequencies of motion. For lake zone, the shaking was much longer. Even some people experienced 30 seconds longer than rock sites. Similarly, damage was not uniform. Greatest damage occurred at those portions of lake zone area which are underlain by 38 to 50 meters of soft soil. So this is due to the resonance, and most of the building which collapsed are 50 to 20 stories. The amplification was high as the soft soil thickness was 38 to 50 meters, and these high-rise buildings have a resonance frequency similar to the fundamental frequency of this site, so they collapse. Another interesting earthquake is San Francisco Bay earthquake, that is Loma Prieta earthquake, 1989. This is also very much cited earthquake for these kind of studies and case studies, and all these details can be found in a book, Tremor. This earthquake has a MMI intensity of 7 at epicentral region, but in San Francisco area, which is 100 kilometers from epicenter, this intensity was 9. Just imagine that intensity was increased 100 kilometers farther from the epicenter. Why it happened? It happened due to local side effects. Due to local side effects, the motion amplified at San Francisco area, and people experienced much more intense shaking than what people experienced in epicentral area. There are 2 islands, Yerba Buena Island and Treasure Island, which have variable thickness of Yerba Buena Island was rock outcrop site. Means rock outcrop means rock is exposed to surface, and another was Treasure Island was a soil site, means soil, there is a soil cover, thick soil cover over the rock. Both have equal distance from epicenter, but the peak oscillations at Yerba Buena, which is a rock site, the oscillations were 0.06 G and 0.03 G respectively on EW and east-west and north-south component. This is a way horizontal components are described. 2 components. All the motion has 3 components. As you know, in seismology and earthquake engineering, we say that one component is east-west component, another is north-south component for horizontal component, and vertical is vertical. So both the horizontal components, east-west and north-south, were 0.06 G and 0.03 G at Yerba Buena Island, which is a rock site. And for soil site, that is Treasure Island, these oscillations were 0.16 G and 0.11 G, which is much higher than the previous values. Again, for this, you can see these response spectra. These are response spectra for the same earthquake, for that Loma Prieta earthquake. You can see for rock site in San Francisco, the response spectra is much lower, which is a yellow line. You can see here this yellow curve, which is much lower than the soft soil site response spectra. Another interesting thing is both the soft soil site has higher period that they are around 0.8 G, and for rock site the period for which highest spectral acceleration is at around 0.3 G, 0.3 second. So, and for soil site it is around 0.8 seconds. So 0.8 seconds, that means if you convert it into frequency, which is inverse of period. So for rock site, this frequency comes to around 7 Hertz, 6.66 Hertz, that is 0.3 G, and for this comes to around 1.25 Hertz for soft soil sites. So here also, from this figure, you can clearly see that the frequencies of soft soil sites are much lower than rock sites, and the amplitudes of spectral acceleration are much higher. And whenever you have used IS code, IS 1893, we have to use the spectral oscillations given there for designing any building. So for soft soils, if we consider this earthquake and we have to design a building for this earthquake, for soft soil sites, these spectral oscillations of use should be these ones, and for rock sites the spectral oscillations used should be these ones. So we can see that the forces will be much lower for rock sites and the forces will be much higher for soft soils. I think this will be clear that this is that how these things are significant. Now there are different methods to evaluate how these side effects. The first method is theoretical method, which is known as ground response analysis. There are several ground response analysis methods: linear equivalent method, non-linear methods, linear methods. But all those methods use the concept of wave propagation, and using the theory of wave propagation, they estimate side amplification curves, and these side amplification curves, when multiplied by the motion at base rock, we can get a motion at surface of the soil site. For this kind of study, means ground response analysis study, the basic requirement is shear wave velocity profile. Means basic requirement is actually the dynamic properties of soil. Dynamic properties of soil, such as shear wave velocity profile up to the depth of bedrock, SPTN values, which may be converted to shear wave velocity profiles, and shear wave velocity profiles are directly proportional to the shear modulus of any site. So shear wave velocity profiles directly give the stiffness of the site. G by Gmax curves and damping curves. G by Gmax curves and damping curves provide us the information that how the stiffness decreases, the shear stiffness of the soil decreases with increase in strains, and damping curves provide us the detail about how the damping in the soil increases as the strain increases. As the strain increases, the non-linearity increases and the stiffness decreases and damping will increase, which is very evident. From this is the amplification curve which I plotted for you. The x-axis is frequency and this y-axis is amplification at that particular site. You can see this first peak This first peak is the fundamental frequency of that site, and other peaks are the natural frequencies. Other natural frequencies. This is first natural frequency, also known as fundamental frequency. This is second natural frequency, third natural frequency, fourth natural frequency, and so on. Maximum amplification is at first natural frequency, which is very evident in in the theory of vibration and concept of vibrations. First mode has the maximum displacement and maximum amplifications. So, and this is the first resonance frequency also. So here maximum amplification occurs. Due to this amplification, the maximum damage will occur for the buildings which have this frequency, because they will resonate with this site, and the motion increases, and hence the damage increases. So whenever we are planning a building or something, we have to account for these things. Another method of doing the same exercise, doing the finding out the transfer functions or these amplification functions, is standard spectral ratio. This is an experimental method. In this, there are two methods. First is for this kind of study, we need two sensors. One is kept at rock site. It may be a rock outcrop site, as this sensor, which is rock outcrop. Again, rock outcrop means rock is exposed at the surface, and one sensor is at soil site. Or the rock outcrop sensor maybe we can drill a hole in the soil cover and place our sensor at the bottom of the soil cover at the bedrock. These are the methods by which and as we have two sensors. So when we divide the motion of this soil sensor with the motion of bedrock sensor, we will get the amplification. See, this is the Fourier spectra of rock site, and this is the Fourier spectra of soil site. When we divide soil site by rock site, we get this amplification function. And this highest frequency, the frequency for which highest amplification is there, this is the fundamental frequency of the site. Another method which is developed by Professor Nakamura is horizontal to vertical spectral ratio. He found out that when we divide, for this method we need only one sensor that can be placed at the surface of soil site, and for this he found out that when we divide the spectra of horizontal motion with the spectra of vertical motion, the highest peak defines the fundamental frequency of the site. This is the Fourier spectra of horizontal motion. This is the Fourier spectra of vertical motion. When we divide both these, we get this amplification function. The interesting thing is this amplification function may not be used for actually amplification, because most of the times this amplification value, which here is seen as 10, may not be correct. But this frequency where this amplification is lying, this frequency is most of the times is correct. So this is a very easy method to know the fundamental frequency of the site. Now we come to implications on early warning. As an earlier presentation, you might have understood how the early warning is done and how all these things are calculated. The simple concept of early warning is to take early data of shaking near the epicenter, process it, and find out the intensity. Now suppose the sensor is placed near the epicenter, but the sensor is at soil side. In that case, one sensor is at soil side and one sensor is at rock side, and both are equidistant to epicenter, and both have different, both will experience different kind of motion. So there could be error in estimation of magnitude, because one sensor may be recording different higher shaking, and one sensor is recording maybe the lower shaking, and the estimation won't be very good. Even though many people, many researchers believe that there is no amplification in P phase of strong motion, as the P phase is the P waves are longitudinal waves, and longitudinal waves, as you know, are compressional waves, and the compressibility of, or the Young's modulus of soil is very high, and it is linear. It is linear to very high strains, for the limit of higher strains. So many people believe that there will be no effect, but still several research are going on all around the world, including IIT Roorkee, to understand the effect of local site conditions on P phase. Still, there is no algorithm to account for local site effects in P phase of the strong motion, and hence to include in early warning. But very soon there will be some, and someone will come up with something. But people are working on it tirelessly to understand how this important aspect can be included in early warning, and the accuracy of magnitude estimation can be increased. These now another important aspect or implication of early warning is, suppose we have two sites in a city, as in Delhi, you know, there is a ridge area which is a rock site, and other sites are soil sites. So if we have an earthquake in Chamoli or Uttarkasi, and we have to we want to give a warning to Delhi, but Delhi is 300 kilometers, and we found out that there won't be much intensity there in Delhi. We may not give warning, but it may happen that at rock sites the intensity of motion is low, but at soil sites the intensity of motion is high. So we can choose sites if we know which site have higher amplification. Hence, higher amplification means they may have some intensity of shaking, and some site which is a rock site may have a lower intensity of shaking, and we may choose not to give warning to reduce the panic, and we can select the sites by this. And I'd like to inform you that Japan is actually doing this. Japanese network of sensors is very wide. They have more than 5,700 sensors all around Japan, installed everywhere, and using those sensors they have estimated parameters for site amplification. Using those site amplification parameters, magnitude and distance, they can calculate actually what PGA or what actual intensity you may experience at your place where you are sitting, and at some other place, and they choose which place needs to be warned and which place need not to be warned. This reduces the risk of false warning. In this way, most of the warnings issued are for actual sites, for the sites where actually the shaking is felt, and this way we reduce panic and lots of things. Now we come to Delhi scenario. As I told you, Delhi has a rock site. Delhi has rock sites, and soil sites. This orange portion of this map is the ridge area, commonly known as ridge area. This is IMD. This is Delhi Jal Board Karol Bagh office. This is Dhaula Kuan. Here JNU. This is IGNOU. All this area has rock outcrop, and hence the fundamental frequency of these sites is very high. Whenever there is some earthquake, these sites will experience lowest intensity of motion in Delhi, rather than the sites which are in green portion, which are soil sites. And in these soil sites also, the most vulnerable sites which have the deepest soil layers are near Yamuna, like Kashmiri Gate, Bhimrao Medical College. And these sites, these dots and triangles and squares are the locations where strong motion sensors are installed by IIT Roorkee. There are 19. These are 19 sites where we have sensors. So these sites experience higher motion, and if we know, as I told you in earlier slide, if we know which site has higher amplification for any earthquake which is originating in Uttarakhand or Himachal or maybe in Haryana, means as Delhi experienced lots of earthquakes, local earthquakes which are coming from Haryana, Rohtak and all, we may decide which area is more vulnerable, and accordingly we can choose to give warning. Also, we may choose the kind of design of buildings for the possible scenario, as some are soil sites, some are rock sites, some have lower forces, some have higher forces. So it's better to design actually accordingly the soil conditions which will give benefit. It may even reduce the cost of construction. Thank you.